My name is Claire Sanders, and today I'm telling you the story of the moment I realized that sometimes, no matter how much you give, you'll never truly belong. I'm 31 years old. I live in a quiet part of Charleston now, far from the echoes of the house I grew up in. Madison, my younger sister, was always the golden one. And I learned early on to expect very little and smile anyway. I never wanted to take anything from her. I just wanted to be seen as family too. When I received the wedding invitation, I told myself it would be different this time. It was being held at an old historic castle outside the city, white stone walls, towering windows, and gardens that looked like something from a storybook. I put on my best dress, took a steady breath, and stepped inside. I didn't know yet how quickly everything would unravel. Growing up, Madison was always the one with the spotlight. She had the bright laugh that filled a room, the charm that made strangers lean in closer, and the kind of effortless beauty that everyone noticed. My parents, Deborah and Richard Sanders, adored her in ways they never quite did with me. Maybe it was because she needed more. Or maybe because I learned early on not to ask. I remember birthdays where Madison's cake had sparklers and balloons, while mine sat quietly on the kitchen counter, candles melting down on their own. Family vacations where Mom would pack an extra suitcase just for Madison's outfits, but forget my sneakers. Little things. Always little things. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself love wasn't measured by attention. One memory stayed with me more than any other. I was 19, home for Thanksgiving break. Madison was off on another adventure, Italy, or Spain, I can't remember now. Mom asked me to help her organize old family albums. I thought it would be nice, sorting through old pictures, reliving moments we all shared. Instead, I found something else. In the back of the closet, inside a small cedar box, was a leather-bound journal. I opened it without thinking. Page after page, year after year, my mother had written memories about Madison. Her first day of kindergarten, her favorite lullabies, the time she broke her arm and made everyone sign her cast. There were clippings of Madison's first ballet recital, awards, letters. A life catalogued carefully, lovingly. I flipped through every page, searching for even a line, a mention of myself. Nothing. Not a word. Not a photo. It was like I had been a guest in my own childhood home, someone passing through without leaving a mark. When I asked Mom about it, she smiled, almost tenderly, and said, "You were always so independent, Claire. Madison needed the attention. You didn't." At the time, I nodded like I understood. Like that was enough of an answer. But something inside me cracked that day. Quietly. Silently. Like a small branch breaking under too much snow. I spent years patching over that crack. Smiling at birthdays. Sending gifts. Showing up at events where my name was barely mentioned. Telling myself that being needed was not the same thing as being loved. Standing there at Madison's wedding, holding my place card, I realized nothing had changed. No matter how much you build yourself up, no matter how solid you become, if they never saw you in the first place, they never will. And for the first time, I stopped blaming myself for it. The venue was breathtaking. A white stone castle tucked between trees that had already begun to turn golden. Warm lights spilled out from the tall glass windows, soft music drifted through the air, and ballet staff in black ties greeted guests as they stepped from sleek cars. I arrived alone. That wasn't new. The attendant at the front desk greeted me with a bright smile. "Welcome." "Name?" "Claire Sanders," I said quietly. She scanned her list. Her smile faltered, just for a second. Then she quickly recovered. "Ah. You've been placed near the coatroom, just off the side hallway." I blinked. "Sorry, what?" "It's a small overflow section. But it's quite comfortable," she added quickly, as if trying to soften the blow. I looked over at the seating chart mounted beside her. Nathan's family had a full row near the head table. Friends from Madison's college were front and center. And me? I wasn't even on the visible part of the board. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe someone forgot to print the updated chart. I walked toward the bridal suite, where I saw Mom adjusting Madison's veil, her hands gently smoothing out invisible wrinkles. They looked radiant, like a portrait from a magazine. I waited quietly until Mom looked up. "Claire? What are you doing back here?" I think there's been a mix-up with the seating," I said. They have me by the coatroom. Her face barely changed. Yes. That's correct. A pause. Why? We had to prioritize close family and key guests, she said simply. I stared at her. I am close family. She offered a tight smile. Claire, don't make this about you. It's Madison's day. Madison turned, her earrings catching the light. I'm sure it wasn't personal, she said sweetly. These things happen. Her voice was sugary, but her eyes told another story. I glanced between them, hoping, just for a second, for someone to say, you're right. This isn't fair. Instead, Mom placed a hand on my shoulder. You should be grateful you were invited at all. Grateful. That word stung more than anything else. Just then, Dad approached. Let's not do this now, he said, voice low. It's just a seat. Don't make it bigger than it is. But it wasn't just a seat. It never had been. It was every empty chair I'd sat at. Every time I paid for gifts and signed cards that were never from me. Every time I stood in the background while someone else was celebrated. I looked at them, Mom, Dad, Madison, and I realized I wasn't angry. I was done. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I simply nodded, turned, and walked away. My heels echoed against the marble as I left the grand hall behind. In my hand was the place card they'd assigned me, Claire Sanders, Table 13, Side Hall. The gold ink was elegant. Precise. As if someone had carefully written my exclusion into the script. I didn't go back to the seat they'd assigned me. Instead, I walked down the side hallway, heels clicking against the polished stone, the sound oddly loud in the silence. I passed gilded mirrors, dim wall sconces, and eventually found a bench tucked near the exit. That's where I sat. Not as a guest. Not as family. Just as someone who no longer needed to pretend. In my hand, I still held the name card, Claire Sanders, Table 13. The gold edges curled slightly under my grip, the ink already smudged by the heat of my palm. I stared at it for a long time. Not out of sadness. Not even out of anger. I just needed the moment to land. To feel what it was like to finally stop trying. The music inside swelled, string instruments, soft applause, laughter that didn't belong to me. A whole world unfolding just a few steps away. And I had never been further from it. A memory came back, sharp and strange. 2 years ago, before Madison had even met Nathan, I'd been invited to a fundraising gala through my job. A biotech firm was hosting, and I had an extra seat. Madison had just lost her job at the time, laid off from a startup she barely worked at, so I thought it might lift her spirits. I let her tag along. That night, she wore my favorite black dress, charmed the whole room, and walked away with 3 job offers. One of them came from Nathan's firm. It didn't bother me back then. I was happy for her. Proud, even. I just didn't realize she would never mention me. Not once. Not when they met. Not when they dated. Not even when they got engaged. I only found out through a coworker's Facebook post. I remember reading the caption, Madison Sanders and Nathan Cole, perfect match made at last year's gala. There wasn't a single photo of me. It was like I'd never been there. Just like every birthday. Every holiday. Every family picture where I was either cropped out or holding the camera. I sat still on that velvet bench, back straight, eyes forward. I didn't cry. I didn't text anyone. I just let the silence do what it does best, settle. Until a voice broke it. Claire? I looked up. Nathan. The groom. Standing just a few feet away, hands in his pockets, tie loosened, brow slightly furrowed. He looked confused. Not upset. Just thrown. I've been looking for you, he said, glancing at the empty bench beside me. I saw your card and it didn't seem right. I didn't move. It wasn't a mistake, I said. He hesitated. Still. You shouldn't be sitting out here alone. I'm used to it, I said softly. Something flickered in his eyes. Understanding, maybe. Or guilt. He sat down beside me. That's when I knew something was shifting. Not just in him. But in the whole story they thought they'd written without me. Nathan sat beside me, elbows resting on his knees, staring at the floor like it might have answers. Claire, he said after a long pause, can I ask you something? I glanced sideways. Go ahead. His voice dropped. Has Madison ever said anything to you, about me? Something that didn't sit right? I blinked. What do you mean? He hesitated. She's been acting different lately. Distant. Controlling. I asked her about simple things, our guest list, her finances, even her work schedule, and she either dodges the questions or changes the subject. This morning, she snapped at me for asking what time the ceremony started. I stayed quiet. There's something else, he added, pulling out his phone. I probably shouldn't be showing you this, but... He scrolled, then handed me the screen. Messages. Dozens. From Madison to her best friend. Nathan is sweet, but too easy. I just need to act helpless for a few more months. Once I lock down the marriage, the condo is mine. He'll never question anything if I keep smiling. My stomach turned, not from shock, but from recognition. It was the same way she handled our parents. The same way she handled me. Did you know, I said quietly, that I introduced you to? He looked at me, startled. That gala where you met her. I invited her as my guest. She didn't even have a job at the time. I let her borrow my dress. I told her it would be good for her to get out of the house. He was silent. She never told me that, he finally said. She never tells anyone what doesn't serve her, I replied. A long pause stretched between us, thick with realization. Then another voice joined us. Nathan. We both turned. Elaine Cole. His mother. Standing a few feet away, holding her phone like a piece of evidence. I wasn't going to interfere, she said calmly. But I need you to see this. She handed him her phone. His hands trembled slightly as he read. I watched his face shift, confusion, hurt, and then something harder. Resolve. She told her stylist, he said aloud, voice breaking, that 6 months after the wedding, she'd push for a prenup change. Elaine nodded. She called me a rich old checkbook. Said all this, she gestured at the castle, the guests, the flowers, was just a setup to secure a future she hadn't earned. He stood slowly, breathing uneven. I stood with him. She's lied to everyone, he muttered. To me. To you. To her family. No, I said. She didn't lie to them. They just never asked. That's when the music inside stopped. A murmur rose from the main hall. Someone was coming. Heavy heels clacked against the floor, fast, sharp. Madison. She turned the corner, veil half off, eyes darting between the three of us. There you are, she said breathlessly. Why are you all out here? Nathan didn't flinch. Come with me, he said, his voice steady now. We need to talk. All of us. For the first time, I saw it, the panic behind her perfect mascara, the way her hand clutched her bouquet like a shield. And I didn't have to say a word. Because for once, I wasn't the one unraveling. The room had gone silent. Nathan stood near the center of the hall, envelope in hand. The soft hum of conversation died as soon as Madison entered, flustered, trying to gather herself with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Elaine walked in behind us, calm and composed. I followed quietly, not as a participant, but as a witness. Is something wrong? Madison asked, trying to laugh it off. You just left the ceremony, what's going on? Nathan didn't hesitate. I've seen the messages. Her face froze. He held up the printouts. The ones you sent to your friend. The ones where you said this wedding was about locking down a future. Not love. Madison's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Elaine stepped forward. You also called me a walking checkbook. That this family would be yours to control once the papers were signed. Madison turned toward me then, desperate, defensive. Claire, say something. You know I didn't mean any of that. I met her eyes. Steady. Clear. I don't think you ever meant to be kind, Madison. You just meant to win. Gasps echoed through the hall. Guests turned, whispers rising like wind. Nathan placed the envelope on the nearby table. This is a petition to annul the marriage. I've already signed it. Silence. Heavy, weighted silence. Our mother, Deborah, stood near the back. For once, she didn't rush in to defend Madison. She didn't look at me, either. Just stared at the floor like it was the only solid thing left beneath her. Madison took one step back. You're all turning on me, over a few stupid texts? No, Nathan replied calmly. We're seeing you for who you are. Finally. Madison looked around the room, hoping someone, anyone, might step in. No one did. And for the first time in our lives, it wasn't me left out in the hallway. It was her. I didn't stay for the rest of the evening. There was no celebration left. No bouquet toss, no dance floor. Just silence and the sound of 100 people trying to figure out what had just happened. I slipped out through the side entrance, the same hallway I had walked down earlier, alone. This time, it didn't feel like exile. It felt like choice. The night air was cool. The stars had started to show between drifting clouds, and the breeze carried the scent of distant roses and cut grass. I took off my heels, held them in one hand, and started walking toward the guest parking lot. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother. I didn't know, Claire. I really didn't. I stared at the screen for a moment, then turned it face down in my palm. No anger. No need to reply. I wasn't waiting for her to understand anymore. For years, I stayed quiet hoping they'd notice. Hoping someone would say, you matter too. But silence isn't always noble. Sometimes, it's just survival. And survival had shaped me into someone who no longer needed their approval to feel whole. That night, I checked into a small inn a few miles down the road. No crystal chandeliers or string quartets, just clean sheets, a warm cup of tea, and a view of the trees swaying in the dark. I sat by the window for a while, letting the quiet settle in. I didn't win. There was no trophy. No dramatic applause. But I was free. And sometimes, that's all the justice you need. Have you ever shown up for a family that never showed up for you? Sometimes, the hardest goodbye is the one you never say out loud. You just stop waiting, stop explaining, and walk away. Not out of anger. But because your peace matters more than being understood. If Claire's story reminded you of someone, or maybe even yourself, leave a comment below. We read every word. And if you're on your own path to letting go, know this. You're not selfish. You're just finally choosing yourself. Subscribe for more stories like this one. You're not alone here.